bailout of SAA may not be enough. According to reports, the recent Treasury bailout of 3 billion rand will not cover the bankrupt airline's operating costs until the end of March 2018. To make matters worse, rating agencies will not be appeased. Treasury last week said given the nature of the problems at SAA, dipping into the National Revenue Fund was a measure of last resort. This is allowed by Section 16 of the Public Finance Management Act. However, head of financial markets at ETM Analytics, Jana van de Venter, says South Africa's fiscus is already under significant pressure.
That's definitely a big concern. Government has now been forced, or National Treasury has been forced to tap the National Revenue Fund to provide this latest bailout to SAA. Initially, there was talk around potentially selling off some of the National Treasury's assets, which would have been Telkom shares that they wanted to sell to finance a bailout. And now the question is, where are they going to find additional funds to bail out or to provide further bailouts to South African Airways and other parastatals as well?
Economists have warned that the recent transfer of additional funds from Treasury to SAA will not sit comfortably with credit rating agencies. Treasury says the 1.8 billion rand given will prevent the airline from defaulting on its loan to Citibank, which may result in another ratings downgrade. 1.2 billion rand has also been given for use as working capital. However, Van de Venter says Treasury needs to consider other options.
For South African Airways specifically, partial privatization is the best way to go at this point in time. It would force the airline to get in private sector players who are not implicated in so-called state capture to really make the hard decisions that are required to get the airline to not run at a loss anymore, to become profitable again. And it also would provide Treasury with some additional funding that they can use elsewhere.
Venter believes the incoming CEO has great challenges ahead of him as the ailing airliner needs a turnaround strategy.
So the new CEO faces a very, very difficult task, and it's tough to envisage how the CEO will be able to implement changes that can make a significant or could have a significant impact at the airline when the chairperson is still at the helm of the airline. It's very difficult to see how things at SAA is going to change with the current structure that's in place there. It's, as mentioned earlier, SAA is still implicated in so-called state capture, and until such a time that we can remove the elements and the individuals that have also been implicated in so-called state capture, it's very difficult to see how we can see a turnaround for South African Airways.
The situation at SAA, according to de Venter, is not budget neutral and highlights how there may likely be a change if there's no partial sale of assets. She says SAA will require more bailouts as the entity is struggling to raise funding in the market.